Let's talk about some quarterbacks here. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of, piggyback off of last week's episode. We previewed some teams that were going to get into their spring showcase or spring games or spring contest. There's always some sort of idiom that they want to use to refer to their final spring practice, or as they're winding down the spring. Why don't we go ahead and start with Western Kentucky? Guy we've talked about a lot, Bailey Zappi, Tyrell Pigram, last year's starter. Still don't necessarily fully know his status. I would go out and follow Jared McDonald from the Bowling Green Daily News. He is the Western Kentucky beat writer. All things Tyrell Pigram. All things Western Kentucky, but specifically Tyrell Pigram's status, follow Jared. The last thing I saw from him was that he had entered the portal but was continuing to practice with the team. However, Pigram was not seen on the sidelines for the spring game. So, Steve, I'm pretty sure that, we kind of got the same intel that the person who was taking most of the snaps was Bailey Zappi. Before we get to Bailey Zappi as a whole here, because, when you bring in Zach Kitley and you bring his entire offense, he's going to be the guy, right? A little bit worrisome on your end that, we don't know who a number two is going to be out there.
Yeah, I think for any program it should be, right. Because all it takes is, Lord heaven forbid, one bad play and the quarterback's out. So you got to have a number two. That's an interesting point. They had a good recruit a year or two ago from the East Coast area. The name blanks me. Maybe you remember it, but he was a good athlete, good recruit. So maybe if he can develop. But yeah, not having number two is definitely concerning for any program, whether you have a good quarterback or not.
The reason I bring that up is because while Western Kentucky's quarterback play, you might not be able to say it's been quite, Brandon Doughty level, Mike White level. They've always had a solid stable of guys, right? Guys who had playing experience, whether it was Davis Shanley, Stephen Duncan, Kavaris Thomas, Tyrell Pigram. Now, it's Bailey Zappi or bust. So we will use that to transition into Mr. Zappi. Had a little bit of a rough outing, but again, it's a spring game, so I'll let you take it away from there and, kind of break down what you saw.
Yeah, so admittedly, me and you are on the same boat. We probably only saw clips of each game, if anything. So we probably, we read about it, and the big takeaway was 4 interceptions for Zappi. And if any Western Kentucky fans are to be alarmed by that, I don't think I would be.
I know 2 of those were off of tips, so we should clarify that.
Exactly, yeah, 2 were off tips. And for the simple fact, if you were to go back and look at like Joe Burrow's spring game before he had his Heisman winning season, or any of these quarterbacks have these big seasons, if you look at their spring games, it's probably pretty pedestrian. Maybe not 4 interceptions, but it's probably nothing that's going to blow you away, if you will. So I'm not too concerned about it. Of course, you want him to come out and have a good performance. He's probably a little bummed that he didn't come and show out, but if anything, it makes his stock lower, so you can kind of invest more in it with the mindset that when the season comes around, it'll pay off down the road. But nothing to be concerned about. Of course, you want to see better performance, but again, only 15 practices there, even though it's his offense that he knows. It's new players, even though there's several of his players there. So I think have summer, have fall ball, and then once the season comes around, I would not be concerned at all. It's a spring game, so not too concerned. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, Eric, but I think you'd want him to play better, but you're not too concerned either way.
I leave the quarterback breakdowns to you. The only thing that I will kind of chime in here and add is this. You got to remember, with a new offense, it's not just a new offense for the quarterback. It's a new offense for everybody. So in the spring, it's going to take time. That's the big takeaway for me is it's not just a quarterback. And to be transparent, it's not a new offense for Bailey Zappi. It's an only new offense for the rest of the guys coming in with him. So I especially that system that they're running, give the rest of the players time to develop, and he's thrived in that system at Houston Baptist. So I certainly think that he'll play a huge part in that process as far as getting everyone on the same page. Him and offensive coordinator Zach Kitley, excuse me. So kind of my thoughts there. But why don't we go and transition to the West Coast? Or I think you can consider Utah the West Coast, right? Or we consider the mountain range, right?
Past Texas is west to me. I'm like, okay.
Anything past Texas is West Coast, right? Head out there, Blake Anderson, his first spring with the Aggies, Utah State. Andrew Peasley took the majority of the snaps out there. Of course, that Logan Bonner, former Arkansas State Red Wolf quarterback, will be joining Blake Anderson out there. Kind of your thoughts on that situation, what you saw from Peasley.
Yeah, so I think it's encouraging because he played pretty well. The stat line, again, don't put too much stock into stats in spring game, but he was 16-24, 234 yards passing there, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. So I think it's from the box score point of view, it's nice to see him relatively pick up the offense and able to move the offense downfield. Bonner, I don't know, he tweaked some type of injury that he had in the spring, so wasn't able to compete. So I think that competition will really ramp up in the fall, and Bonner is back into it. So I think it was good for Peasley to learn the offense and show that he can play within the offense. And once Bonner comes back, I would imagine he is able to pick up the offense fairly quickly. So again, not a ton of takeaways from the Utah State spring game, but something to touch on that. Yeah, Peasley had a good showing, but the competition is really going to heat up this fall when Bonner is able to kind of come back full force there.
We'll take a hard shift here. We're going to go from Utah to South Florida, head down to Miami and Florida International. Saw four quarterbacks, actually. The walk-on Isaiah Velez took a couple snaps, but the three were in the quarterback competition: Max Bordenschlager, Hayden Carlson, Kalen Wiggins. I know you had a chance to kind of get an eye on a couple of those things. We'll quickly shout out Anthony Euro, kid who's doing great things here. 305 Sports. He tweeted out videos of all the passing attempts. From each quarterback. So I know you had a chance to get your eye on those. So I'll let you take it away there, and then kind of go back and forth as far as certain things down there with Butch Davis and the Panthers.
So I think my biggest takeaway was it was good to see Max have a better performance than what we saw, in the season last year. And so we didn't see any deep shots necessarily. We didn't see any big plays, but we saw him run the offense. We saw a little bit of the RPO scheme. I think it was probably, like most spring games, a little bit kind of watered down, if you will, is kind of the basics. But we saw some quick passes. One throw that we missed downfield for Max that we would like to see completed. But I think if you're Max, you got to feel encouraged about your performance. Kalen Wiggins, what was he, 3 of 5, 3 of 6, somewhere in that range?
Kalen was 3 of 6.
Yeah, so kind of.
Hey, so really quick, I'll jump in and throw the numbers really quick. Yeah. Kalen 3 of 6, Hayden Carlson 1 of 5, Bordenschlager 3 of 5. Yeah. 3 of 5.
Yeah. So again, not like a ton of takeaways from film because it was so condensed, but I think my biggest takeaway was just the fact that Max got out there and he has to feel encouraged moving forward. And then, we still have the summer and the fall. And so I wouldn't rule out, Hayden or Kalen or even Grayson James coming in, even though he'll be the lower man on the totem pole, if you will. But it was nice just to see a different offense, even if it wasn't executed to perfection, right? I don't know if that's what the fans think, but it was at least some different schemes in the offense and something was, at least changing. So.
FIU fans are not eternal optimists like you, sir. So to say that that's what the fans thought, that's not what they thought. But we're not here for what they think. Steve, really quick, can you use the word condensed twice? Can you kind of elaborate that for the viewers, the listeners?
So it was he had Max had 5 attempts, Kalen had 6 attempts, and Hayden had 5 attempts. So there wasn't a chance to get in a groove or a rhythm. Whereas the last quarterback we talked about, Andrew Peasley, had 24 attempts. So let's say he started 1 of 5. Well, he didn't start very well, but he would have had the time to work out of it and then go 16-24. So any of these quarterbacks, there's not a lot of stock how they played. I just thought it was encouraging that Max showed a few good things, but it's nothing to look into because 5 attempts, I mean, if you go 1 of 5, you could end up the game going 20-27, so.
That's what I wanted you to elaborate on a little bit. Again, I think I don't want to say we put too much stock into spring games. It's the first time that, really the public, unless your program of choice, program that you're following, you'll open up certain scrimmages, that you really get a chance to see everyone in that game environment. But I put more stock into the way the players around them play and put a goal in that spring game than necessarily the quarterback, especially if you have a competition with 3 guys. Because so then we had quick math here, 5, 10, 16, 17 attempts, right? So even that is still a small sample size, into 20, 25, 30 attempts. So, and he had 17 attempts total. So, kind of difficult to take away certain things as far as that's concerned. One other thing I do want to ask you is this, and this is not necessarily just an FIU question, it's a general question. Do you have a preference as far as your spring game, as far as whole field versus half field? I mean, that's one thing that you can say, as far as FIU, some of the things they did, they were choosing to start a little bit further up, towards the 35, 40. And then, of course, if they had a penalty, they would go back and then try to drive the length of the field. Versus I saw some teams that were just running half field. So do you have a preference? Do you think it really matters?
I do have a preference. I know every coach, they do things differently, but I think the closer you are to a game feel, the game environment, I think the more realistic are the better read you can get. So, for example, Ohio State's Ohio State's spring game this past Saturday, or maybe it was 2 Saturdays ago, whenever it was, there was like a spring game field. They had the kickoffs. They didn't return it, but they had the kickoffs, and then they had the full length of the field to drive. And they actually had like teams going against each other. They would plug and chug, of course, but it wasn't like an offense versus defense. So it was like a real game feel. And I think when you are in that environment, not just from like a number standpoint, but from kind of to elaborate what you talked about, you can see what quarterback has control over the team, what quarterback has command, how a player's reacting to him. Like, you can get a better feel for the situation as opposed to a guy going or a team just playing half field, or, okay, you get 8 snaps regardless what happens. So I like the feel as real as a game feel as possible is what I prefer, because it's more realistic. But obviously there are way smarter coaches than me out there that do things differently. That's just my preference.
I'll quickly give you my POV. I'm a fan of, like you said, making the situation as realistic as possible. And the reason I bring that up, Steve, is, we talked about FAU spring game a couple weeks ago, right? What FAU chose to do was split the teams in half, right? Team white versus team red. I can't remember what they called their teams, but they had like a senior captain on each side, and they drafted players. And that's fun and engaging, all those things. But then what happens if you're trying to assess your quarterback play? You got quarterback X, and they're behind your starting left tackle, but your third string right guard, when he's in a draft like that, right? So maybe a little bit hard to assess, but again, coaches have their reasoning behind doing all of these things. With that, let's go ahead and take a trip up. What would that be? 95, probably go 95 to I-10 to get to Memphis from South Florida, if memory serves me correct. Not that I've ever driven. I have a firm belief there's no need for me to drive from South Florida to Memphis unless I've broken the law, and there's a need for me to drive that far. They invented planes for a reason. But if we were driving, we would end up at the Liberty Bowl with the Memphis Tigers. 4-man race there. So you go and take it away and give your thoughts.
And Brooke, we're all over the place geographically. I think you take 95 to 10, and then what's called 50 takes you up through Jackson, Mississippi, then up through Memphis. The only reason because I was played in Mississippi, but so there's your geography and your road maps for the podcast. But again, not a game I had a bunch of eyes on. I think the biggest takeaway was the offense was pretty. Is it vanilla or Manila? Eric, help me with, like, if I'm trying to say it, is it Manila or vanilla?
Oh. I'm sorry. It's vanilla. The reason so you have like a manila envelope. But the reason I laughed is because they can mean something similar. That manila is like a plain envelope, right? So just by happenstance, you might have gotten they're in the same family, but the phrase you're looking for is vanilla offense.
Vanilla offense, plain offense. I won't use that analogy again. I'm the worst. But so I think it was a pretty plain offense. The takeaway, the headlines from the articles we were reading was defense and running game shines. The running game did well. Defense did well. You had 4 quarterbacks that played. Keelan Brown, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, started the game. And it said he had some good things with his legs. Him and Peter Parrish had a pick. The only touchdown was from Grant Gunnell. So not a lot of takeaways there. I do still think it's Grant Gunnell and Peter Parrish that will be 1 and 2 for the competition, but I don't know if anything's closer or if someone's pulling away or not. That's probably one that we won't find out till later in camp, but something to keep our eyes on, because if they have good quarterback play, they could be one of the best teams in America again. So
Staying in the South, let's head to Jonesboro, Arkansas. I'm going to take away there with your thoughts. Almost said Butch Davis. I see so many people mix up the Butch Jones and Butch Davises, right? Yeah. Almost said Butch Davis. Got the wrong one there. But Arkansas State, thoughts there with Butch.
Arkansas State. So obviously Blaine Hatcherback, he had a few touchdowns. I can't remember if I saw any interceptions or not. Regardless of the box score of his stats in the game, James Blackman's coming in the summer, so I think that's when the competition's really going to heat up, kind of like Utah State when Logan Bonner is able to go full force. So, again, not a ton of takeaways. At least he had a few touchdowns, getting to know Butch's offense a little bit more, but James Blackman coming in. So I think that's one that we won't find out until late in the fall. Again, kind of like many of these competitions or many of these schools we talked about besides Western Kentucky.
Hey, Steve, random sidebar here. We tried this on the Shulable podcast and got, a little bit of positive feedback here. Man, what is whether it's in your, professional career or your playing career, I think playing career would be better if you have one, but either or. Worst or like just a very idiosyncratic travel story.
Travel story. Huh. Do you have one off the top of your head that so I can think?
Yeah, so I'll give the one that I gave last week. So obviously different, audience, different listenership here. I actually have a few, but the one that happened last week, the one that I gave last week, and I think I told you the story off here. So heading to opening week, FIU at Liberty, Lynchburg, Virginia. Lynchburg, not going to have very many direct flights. As a matter of fact, it's a one-gate airport.
Oh,
So you have to fly to Charlotte, and then you go from Charlotte to Lynchburg, unless, of course, you got the money for a private plane or you're Liberty University and you're at the athletics program, right? So fly from Sunshine State to Charlotte, no problem. Really quick, have you been in the Charlotte airport? I think I asked you this off here. The Charlotte airport, it is the seventh dimension of hell. Steve, it is a massive airport, but also it's massive in the sense that all of the gates and terminals are on the same floor. So they have signs there, right? Where let's say you're at Terminal 1 and you need to get to your incoming flight, right? You fly in from Florida and your connection is in Terminal 5 and you land in Terminal 1. And when you walk off, they have a sign that says Terminal 5, approximate walk time, 22 minutes. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a problem if you're trying to make your connection and it's only 8 minutes, right? So I remember, and 22 minutes is that's the time for span from Terminal 1 to Terminal 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. It'll go up to 45 minutes, right? So got in and I'm having to haul behind through the airport to get from Terminal 1 all the way to Terminal 4. Only to find out there was a medical emergency coming off of that flight. So we all were delayed. So luckily I made it in time, but I learned very quickly that my legs were out of shape. You're gonna get to Terminal 4. But anyhow, the real, kind of nightmare scenario in Lynchburg. FIU had issues getting into Lynchburg with their flight as well. I fly in the little small, 40-seat plane, and dude, you cannot see outside. It's pitch black. Mm-hmm. And the pilot comes on and says, in order to execute this landing, I'm going to need all electronics off. I need not just airplane mode. I need off. I need your cell phone off. I need go and get your laptop, turn it off, right? Thank the man above, we land safely. Now I'm trying to get back out. Steve, if you're trying to get from Austin, Texas, and and Mrs. Hamner's busy, with baby Jay or the family and whatnot, right? And your car's not available, you might use that little app called Uber on your your phone, right? To get to the airport.
Correct. Yep.
I got a 7 a.m. flight out of Lynchburg. So I'm thinking, all right, it's a one-gate airport. Uh-huh. Ain't not gonna be that much security. I'll get up at 5 to get to the airport. 5:45, 6 o'clock, whatever. You know what doesn't ride on a Sunday morning in Lynchburg at 5 a.m.?
Uber.
Nothing, sir. Nothing. No Uber. I call a taxi service. They laugh in my face. They say, "You're trying to get a taxi Sunday morning this time before noon? Yeah, you got to book that 2 days in advance." So now it's pitch black. It's 5 something in the morning, and I'm thinking the airport is 6 miles away, but it's up a hill. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, all right, I got to start walking. Thinking maybe I can get there 30 minutes before my flight and be fine, right? I'm walking in the dark up this hill, right? Luckily,
Lynchburg, Virginia.
In Lynchburg, Virginia, correct? Yes. Luckily, I got a hit on my Uber about 20 minutes into my walk. The one college kid who goes to the university there. Said, dude, I'm the only person who drives Uber this early in the morning, on Sundays. So that's my nightmarish travel story. So I know I went a little long-winded there, but I'm wondering if you got one in your experience where it's just man, everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Wow, so I don't have any from the playing days because you're always on the bus or flight.
On the bus.
Bus, flight, whatever it may be. My worst travel experience with that, I think it relates to work. I might have shared some of the story before, so I'll keep it PG here. But with work, we travel to spring training, every spring training to check on our players. For those that don't know, we work with a lot of baseball players. And so during spring training, we go and check on our players and we'll talk to the medical staff, kind of all that jazz, make a spring training trip. And usually we'll fly into Tampa and for Florida, and then we drive throughout the state of Florida because spring training is all over the place. Arizona spring training, much nicer as far as the drive because it's all 45 minutes from each other. But anyways, I digress. So we fly in late to Orlando for some reason. We fly in late to Orlando as opposed to Tampa. It's 12 o'clock. We don't have – it's St. Patrick's Day. We don't have any rooms checked. We don't have a rental car. We just kind of show up. So it takes us an hour to get a rental car. We call a hotel. No one's picking up. We finally get a hotel through Expedia. We show up at the hotel. They don't have our information there. So long story short, we end up staying at some random motel off the side of the road that, you have to shower like 6 times off of. And it's like 3 a.m. And so that was a horrible story and a horrible night's sleep because we had to be up super early the next day, be professional, and meet with professional teams to kind of interact. And we had like 3 hours of sleep. We got cockroaches crawling on us. That was a bad trip. And then also in Arizona, we almost missed our flight. I actually had to drive down the wrong side of the road with people honking at me just to get there in time.
What?
They're calling names, like saying so and so and so and so. This is your last chance to get on. As we're like running through security. So long story short, don't travel with me, and you should be safe. But those are my worst travel stories.
Figured we go ahead and throw those in there because, hey, everyone's got to have a travel story. And, I'm glad I'm not driving on the wrong side of the road with you. We'll go ahead and make one transition here as we're driving. Staying in the south, heading to Charlotte. We want to talk about that quarterback race a little bit. James Foster, Chris Reynolds, definitely going to be interesting. And also the spring game weather was kind of an element. I don't know if you caught this, Steve, that they're projecting some bad weather in Charlotte. So still a little unsure as far as what's going to happen with their spring game, but projected to be offense versus defense.
I'm excited to see James Foster. I feel like we know what Chris Reynolds is going to do. So I think it's exciting to see, can James Foster come in and do enough to make that more of a competition, or is Chris Reynolds kind of hold on? So I think this is a spring game that kind of maybe matters more than most of the other ones we've talked about, for the simple fact one quarterback's trying to dethrone the starting quarterback, if you will. So I'm just excited to see James Foster.
Yeah, the projected weather for tomorrow in Charlotte is that we're taping on April 23rd. The spring game will be tomorrow, the 24th. There's a 100% chance of rain, winds at about 16 miles an hour. So yeah, weather will play an element. So they're still figuring out what exactly they are going to do there with the Niners. The other spring game that we will go ahead and take a look here is at, I'll just put my notes here. We're heading down to Ruston, Conference USA, Louisiana Tech. I had a chance to talk to Corey Diaz, beat right there for the Monroe Star Tribune. If my memory serves me right, that should be the publication. Apologies to Corey if I got that wrong. But here's the big thing. Luke Anthony, with that game as far as that's concerned, he's still recovering from off-season, surgery. So what Corey said is that his recovery is going really well, and it looks like he'll actually be projected to kind of be ready for the fall. But as of right now, it's Aaron Allen. So let you go and take it away there with Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, so I think it'll be good just to see Aaron Allen, to see if he has a big spring game that could bode well heading down into the fall. And when Luke Anthony comes back, if Aaron Allen has a big spring game and keeps progressing, then maybe that's his job completely. As last year, Luke Anthony was the main guy, but we saw a lot of switching in and out going on throughout the season. So just excited to see Aaron Allen again, and hopefully if he has a good game, then that will solidify things moving forward. But probably not a ton of takeaways here, but Luke Anthony not being able to play till the fall.
One of the big things with Tech, they still have plenty of talent at receiver, whether it's Griffin Hebert, Smoke Harris, guys like that. So whoever's quarterback in the Bulldogs definitely will have some guys to throw the football to. And I think the big thing that, maybe we can kind of take a look back at this next week is if Aaron Allen gets a lot of the attempts, similar to like in Utah State with Andrew Peasley. If he gets 25, 30 attempts, then at least you have something solid on film. You can kind of take a look at and see how he's progressed as well. But with that, we want to thank you for listening to this episode of the QB Spotlight Podcast. As always, you can find us on Twitter. First off, the podcast at QB Spotlight. You can find myself on Twitter if you want Conference USA takes, hip-hop takes, tank top takes as well. Eric C. Henry _ on Twitter. You can find the QB Guru, where you'll find quarterback takes and maybe some parenting advice at Stephen Hamner. That's STEVEN, Hamner, HAMNER. You can find the podcast at NFL Draft Diamonds. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
I'm getting it down at NFL Draft Diamonds.
It's at Draft Diamonds, and then it's NFLDraftDiamonds.com. So you're
okay. At Draft Diamonds and then NFLDraftDiamonds.com. They do a great job of spotlighting kind of that, talent that we try to look at. Guys, maybe a little bit under the radar. Draft Diamonds on Twitter at NFLDraftDiamonds.com. Last but certainly not least, you can see Stephen Hamner's pretty face. For the women out there, the 1% female audience that we have that wants to see Steve. You can find him on video format, YouTube. Just punch in QB Spotlight. You will find the man himself. If you're looking for, QB breakdowns and maybe a little bit of entertainment as well, maybe we get a cameo from, the newborn. Maybe. Never know. You see, that's incentive to tune in, right?
Yep, never know.
Talk about a draft diamond right there. In about 18 years, we'll get him ready to go. But all jokes aside, I want to thank you for listening. Again, we will get you through the off season with as much QB content, as much football content as possible. And listen, we're open and willing for all feedback, whether that is things we're doing good, things we're doing bad, potential guests, people you want to hear from. Let us know. We will do our best to get them on. Thank you for listening. Happy football watching, everyone, and stay safe.